Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. Hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 7, the elevations, from verses 74 to 81. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. واذكروا إذا جعلكم خلفاء من بعد عاد وبوأكم في الأرض تتخذون من سهولها قصورا وتنحتون الجبال بيوتا فاذكروا آلاء الله ولا تعثوا في الأرض مفسدين. And remember how he made you successors after Ad and settled you in the land. You make for yourselves mansions on its plains and carve out dwellings in the mountains. So remember God's benefits and do not roam the earth corruptingly. قال الملأ الذين استكبروا من قومه للذين استضعفوا لمن آمن منهم أتعلمون أن صالحا مرسل من ربه قالوا إن بما أرسل به مؤمنون. The elite of his people who were arrogant said to the common people who had believed, "Do you know that Saleh is sent from his Lord?" They said, "We are believers in what he was sent with." قال الذين استكبروا إن بالذي آمنتم به كافرون. Those who were arrogant said, "We reject what you believe in." فعقروا الناقة وعتوا عن أمر ربهم وقالوا يا صالح آتنا بما تعدنا إن كنت من المرسلين. So they hamstrung the she-camel and defied the command of their Lord and said, "O Saleh, bring upon us what you threaten us with if you are one of the messengers." فأخذتهم الرجفة فأصبحوا في دارهم جاثمين. Whereupon the quake overtook them and they became lifeless bodies in their homes. فتولى عنهم وقال يا قوم لقد أبلغتكم رسالات ربي ونصحت لكم ولكن لا تحبون الناصحين. Then he turned away from them and said, "O my people, I have delivered to you the message of my Lord, and I have advised you, but you do not like those who advise." ولوطا إذ قال لقومه تأتون الفاحشة ما سبقكم بها من أحد من العالمين. And Lot, when he said to his people, "Do you commit lewdness no people anywhere have ever committed before you? إنكم لتأتون الرجال شهوة من دون النساء بل أنتم قوم مسرفون." You lust after men rather than women. You are an excessive people. صدق الله العظيم. God the Great said the truth. The verses here are carrying on with how the people before us, they denied the messengers and their crimes that they've committed for a messenger to be sent. And we're still learning deeper and deeper in regards to what the tradition of God is, or how it's said in Arabic, Sunnat Allah. The story where we left off was with Saleh, one of the messengers that was sent to Thamud. Before Saleh, we discussed Hud, who Hud said that God has made you successors from Noah, the people of Noah, knowing that Noah's people was powerful, Hud's people were powerful, and Saleh now was repeating the same thing, where God is saying to us that Saleh said to his people that God made the people of Saleh successors after the people of Ad. And then we go as far as learning about them that they were quite strong and powerful. And remember, this is all before the time of Moses and Abraham. This is way before what we can really understand and how the history was. It's just simply we have some traces and some records based on what we find in the ground, as God tells us to travel the land and observe how the people were before us. But it's also astonishing to understand that these individuals, without the tools and the technologies that we have available to us, they were capable of still carving the mountains and building these major mansions and big palaces that God has allowed them to build. They used it as a sign to show their power and their might. But they got to a point where they thought that nobody can defeat them, that's it, that they are the ones who are going to inherit this land forever, them and the generations that are going to come. They thought that the way of their life, the way of their approaching of matter is that's it. But as always, usually when God does send a messenger, these are the first people to deny the messengers because of their arrogance. So they go as far as almost fighting among themselves as well. Because it seems like the person who is in the elites, the ones that have been established in the land, the ones that are affluent or have some sort of power or influence over their people, they are usually the first to disbelieve. And then they start to have these debates and arguments and against the people that they've enslaved themselves, and they're using in a terrible way that, hey, do you believe this messenger? Do you really think he's a messenger? And yes, we see the people who are having a difficult life, or the poor people, or the ones who are lowly in what is considered in this closer life, or this worldly life, that they are the ones who tend to believe. And it shows us that sometimes comfort is not always something that we should be looking for, because the more comfortable we get, the more less we rely on God in a certain way, because we're not people that are going through the hardships, and God has given us this ease that you're sitting in a position where you have the money, you have the power, you have the influence, you have the people around you. So your life is not as difficult as the person who is struggling to find the day-to-day bread for him to eat and for him to survive, especially if he has children and other dependents. It's a very difficult struggle for them. So they are more closer to God because they are more thankful and grateful when certain things occur. So when they hear the message of God, it resonates more to them because they know that this world is a struggle to them, and the world that is going to come is a beautiful world, and it's an easy world as long as they believe and do righteous deeds. As for the person who's an elite, there is no really a benefit for him to believe in his eyes. Yet if he did believe and he did spend from what God has given him, and he did use his influence to spread the name of God everywhere on earth and use it in a way to strive to God, his reward is even much more bigger because he has been given a huge opportunity. But because the usual recipe or the usual dilemma of these individuals is that they use these resources to damn themselves, their damnation is even much greater and much worse, because they're going to hate what they did with their money and what they have been given. And notice here that these people who are arrogant, when they asked and they saw that the majority of the people that were the lowly believed, they took it as a way that it's not for them, that this is for like the dumb people, the idiots at the bottom. As God says at the very beginning in chapter 2, that it's like, should we believe like these fools have believed? Yet these are the ones who are fools. They've left God and what God has given them truly to serve God with, and they made it about themselves and what they're earning, rather than what God has given them opportunity to make this world a better place. But we also understand that these people are inheriting this wealth or are taking it in ways that is not sanctioned by God for us to establish this kind of power. God allows it only to test these people, and God is telling us that they do not have anything in the hereafter, and it's just going to be for their worldly life here. Even though this money and these children and these people that is around them is actually used to also fatigue them and hurt them in this world, they just don't perceive it or see it. So Saleh clearly told them about the sign that God has sent them, which is the she-camel, and they chose to abuse this she-camel, showing that they're arrogant, that there's nothing going to stop them. I do believe that because they're challenging God, is that God is going to enact his promises now through his messengers. But I do also not agree fully with the translation that we read, where it says that they have become lifeless bodies in their homes. But rather what I think happened is, which is going to be covered later in the Quran, is that first, when this occurred, there was a earthquake that happened as soon as they hamstrung the camel, and they were like, oh, well, bring the punishment. So they had a very strong warning at this point, where it's technically it's not a warning that the destruction is about to come, where the earth was shaken, symbolizing almost God's wrath or anger. And they all went into their houses, and they were scared, and they were kneeling and cowering away in their houses because they knew they messed up. They asked for the sign, and the sign was very clear. And at this point, Saleh and the people who believed, they moved away, and God is also telling us in a different verse that Saleh says that within 3 days you're going to be destroyed. And then there's other verses where the blast has taken them, and they became like straw, pretty much, just completely destroyed and completely mangled. So I think it was a two-stage process where God shows them that they're done because they've asked for this clear sign. They got their clear sign. They got an earthquake as soon as they hamstrung the camel, and then God has destroyed them in 3 days after the messenger has told them to do so. One thing that is interesting is that even with the 3-day grace that God has given them out of the mercy of God, they were not able to escape the punishment. It was not for them to be able to find the right decision to leave their homes. In fact, they were so scared, they thought that the houses were their security, that this is what's going to save them from the punishment of God. And this is how the moronic way that these disbelievers truly approach their life. They think that they have control, that they think that they can actually change the events to a certain degree, yet when it's all in the hands of God. If God does not allow something to happen, then it's not going to happen no matter what you're going to try. And if God has decreed for you to be destroyed and put to death, there's absolutely nothing or nobody that can change such command. And when the command reaches you, let's say the 3 days are up, and that's it. There's absolutely nothing that you could say to remove away from you the judgment that God has passed, as there is no changing to God's words. But the fact remains is that you were given ample time and ample threats for you to repent and to ask for forgiveness, and for you to truly go back to the light that God has bestowed upon you and the blessings that He has given you. But because these people choose to do what they're doing, it just becomes sealed, and a, it becomes enough evidence for the threat to be fulfilled. A lot of individuals nowadays, when they hear the threat of God, they take it as something where it is almost an empty threat, because they take this life for granted and they believe that death, because it's inevitable, that they're going to experience death. And the majority of them were good people because the devil has decorated their deeds to them. And these individuals here, they denied the messenger outright, as many people deny the messengers outright. However much evidence and proof, logical proof and reasonable proof that is being given to the people for them to understand that their time is almost up, when the true sign and evidence comes from God in regards to a miracle or something that is extremely precise, at that point it's too late, because you have been given proof and a complete answer, where now God's direct intervention, it shows that you were a disbeliever and you would not believe until God directly intervenes. So you're just a sealed person, and God told us about these individuals that they won't really go far in life or in the hereafter. So we see that the messengers as well telling us something that is very clear, that these people, they just don't like advice. When you advise them to what is good for them, they just don't accept it. They don't like it. They want to break it. They go as far as denying it and changing it. So when the messenger advised them that this is the camel that is free to roam wherever she wants and to drink whenever she wants, they took it upon themselves to break those words, and they wanted to not accept the advice that was given to them. This is an innocent creature that was part of God's property, and they chose to transgress. And if you are the one who took the first shot, I believe God will take the last shot at that point, in which He retaliated and He took revenge for the creature that He has chosen for Himself. And these people are now stuck at their houses until the destruction has come. And as God tells us in a different verse, that He's not scared or worried about what they would do or what their judgment is. And God is free of His servants, yet we want to be God's servants, just not those servants that are arrogant and they think that they could challenge God. And then we move on from the story after learning about Noah and learning about Ad, which is Hud, the messenger Hud. We learn about Saleh. Now we're learning about Lot, specifically the crime of his people. The crime here is that it's an obscenity that even the whole world before Lot, they did not reach to the level of these people's excess. Now, God is telling us here very clearly through His messenger Lot that when people are lusting after men, it is an excessive action. There is concepts where people find pleasure in such actions, and it is something where they're chasing their desires, and it becomes something that's practiced, some sin that they taste, and they start to chase this taste. But the reason why it's excessive is because God has given you a way for you to deal with these sexual desires that we do endure as human beings. And He gave us our mates with a purpose, which is procreation. When they're going with these homosexual tendencies, there is no purpose other than pleasing yourself. And it is something where it is full of grossness and disgust and something that is immoral, because there is nothing benefiting other than your own self gratification and self pleasure. So this is why it is a form of excess. And there is a lot of things that can be understood from these passages, these few passages that gets repeated, where God is telling us that He has given us some spouses. These spouses were for us to truly understand what it means to have a proper relationship. Yet the people who are practicing homosexuality, that relationship is not based on something where God is in the picture, or that even the future generations are in the pictures, or it's something that you're going to see on the day of judgment, whether you make it to heaven or not. The people that you were engaging in this type of activities, if you find yourself in hell, you're going to truly hate these people. And how do you think that you're going to make it into heaven and practice such relations when this feeling itself is not correct? It's coming from a dirty place. It's coming from something that is unclean and impure, and it's not part of what God has designed for us to do. Just because we have the ability to do so, it is not meant that God has willed for us to do so. And this is something that we recognize in the Quran when people are doing these obscenities and immoralities, and when they're asked, Did God have permitted this to you? They say, well, we found our forefathers doing it, and this is just love, and there's nothing wrong with love, and so we're just going to follow what we found our forefathers doing. This is all justification. And of course, this is them just playing with the words and whatever they're feeling, and so that they would justify what is clearly wrong and excessive. So we are starting to now explore some of the crimes of the people that have lived before us and why these people were destroyed. And unfortunately, from all that we have seen, from whether it was a story of Noah on how they would rely on other individuals and other entities other than God for them to think that they have any form of power or influence, they are just calling upon fake rocks or fake individuals or people that have passed away, thinking that these people can save them. This is something that we see now, where people are relying on other human beings and past human beings, thinking that this is how they can truly change and change their lives, and have these rocks and people intervene in their lives, which is complete falsehood. And then they become sectorized and they become parts of cults. This is something that is extremely rampant in what we see here in this day and age. And as for the story of Hud, we see that as well being repeated here, where these people are becoming super arrogant and they think that they're stronger than God. And it was the same repeated with the people of Saleh, where we now have this technology and we have this might, and again, people think that they're better than God. And now with the story of Lot, where we see this homosexuality becoming something rampant in their society, this is something that's, again, that is being presented to us. It seems like all these stories that are coming together in the Quran for us to learn about these people that have been destroyed, it is for us to also get a warning, and so that we don't find ourselves in that same trap. We do not want to be people who are just following what is excessive, lusting over things that we're not allowed to lust, or sitting thinking that we're so powerful and that nothing is going to take us away, or worse, calling upon other deities or other creatures or other things that can't truly avail us nor harm us, but it's harming us in a sense that because we are denying our Lord, and that alone is a major sin and a major crime. As God says that He does not forgive people who associate to Him. And these individuals that we see, these communities and groups that have denied the messengers, their biggest crime is association. They're associating an idea or associating a being to God or associating a partner to God that God has not allowed or sanctioned. And for them, it was the end of the line. I pray that these episodes are helping you. All praise to our God, the Lord of the worlds. Peace be upon you.